Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History Spiritual Quest. We're in Chapter 14 of the Impersonal Life with Joseph Benner. We're going to be moving into Chapter 15 of the Book of John, fourth book of the New Testament. These are the parts of the book where, in both books, we're coming to a crisis point in both of these books. We're wrapping things up. There's only 17 chapters in the Impersonal Life. We're about to finish 14. And these next few chapters of the book of John, they're all about the crucifixion. Hi, Monica. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. We're going to get started with a song. This is He Gave Us Everything.
"17, snow on the ground, Circle G, love all around. He bought that ranch, opened the gate, said come on in, let's celebrate. Tractor pulling through the snow, laughter rising, spirits glow. Both behind, wives and men, family fun again and again. He wasn't just a star in lights, he was the warmth in winter nights. Kindness wrapped in velvet flame, a heart that never played the fame. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring, he gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Riding horses, lake so still, bridge and cross on the quiet hill. Barbecue smoke, stories told, moments more precious than gold. He'd ask me who I'm dating now, what I dream, what I'll allow. He cared like kin, not just a name. He lived for love, not for acclaim. He wasn't just a voice on stage, he was the soul behind the page. A man who'd sing to heal your day and laugh at midnight, lose away. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, he gave us love, he gave us praise. Circle G, where the angels sing. He gave us everything. A shadow in the night, famous face, but heart so bright. Couldn't walk the street like you and me, so we built a world where we were free. He gave us joy, he gave us grace, a piano song in a quiet place. From a jack to a king, in the moonlight ring. He gave us love, he gave us way. Gave us everything. Yes, he gave us everything.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear echoes from Patsy Presley. or at least from a jewelry box that Patsy Presley owned. And here is a rosary crucifix from that box. At some point, Patsy Presley and Vernon, after Elvis passed away, they went into Elvis's bedroom, the untouched bedroom, as we've all been told many times by EPE. It's exactly the way that it was the day that he passed away. We've been told that many times. But at some point, Vernon and Patsy went through the room and they removed many items. Now, one of the reasons they may have removed items is that items were disappearing. That there wasn't any way at that moment to keep track of inventory. I'm sure there is today. Angie Marchese has probably solved that particular issue. They probably know everything that they do have, and it's numbered. But back then, there was just a lot of stuff lying around. And at some point, Patsy Presley came into possession of a jewelry box. And in this jewelry box were pieces like this, which have no real monetary value. They're fairly inexpensive. A lot of different people own these exact objects. These are mass-produced items. There's nothing particularly special about anything in this box other than each piece had some kind of sentimental value for Elvis. And Patsy doesn't know what that sentimental value is. She eventually sold the box and all of the contents to a guy named Tom Salva. And then he pieced it all out onto the auction markets. Now, I don't know what Patsy thought would eventually happen with the contents of the box. And I don't know that she sold it. She gave it. It ended up in Tom Salva's possession. Therefore, I have to assume there was a monetary transaction. Perhaps Patsy just gave him the whole box out of the kindness of her heart. At some point, it was all monetized, and it all made it out onto the auction circuit. This is one of those pieces. We don't really know what it meant to Elvis. It's a Catholic rosary. Now, Priscilla was Catholic. She went to a Catholic school, graduated from a Catholic high school. There's a close-up of one of the pieces on the chain. And there's the crucifix. And that's the back of that piece that we looked at, that connective piece of the chain that has Mary on the front and this symbol with a cross and an M on the back. Let's just go back to the first picture for a moment. So I'm calling this a rosary. It might be a necklace for all I know, the way that it's designed here. I don't really know much about rosaries, but it's got all these little beads. These are not wooden. These are something else. I don't think they're precious stones of any kind, but they do kind of resemble precious stones. And I think that you use them the same way that you would wooden rosary beads. But again, I don't know. So if you know, put it in the chat, put it in the comments, and let the rest of us know. This is also a sneak peek for the episode I'm going to do later today. We're going to look at a whole bunch of stuff that was in this jewelry box and a few other items that were gifted to Patsy. So it's going to be a Patsy Presley stuff day. But now let's slip on over into the spiritual text that we're here to look at. This is chapter 14 of the book of the Impersonal Life by Joseph Benner. This is a book that Elvis annotated and he gave to many people. he felt that the language in this book helped those who were looking for resonance in the scripture to see it more clearly, that this offered a perspective that wasn't taught within an organized religious structure that Elvis felt to have value. In the chapters that we've been looking at, the last chapter told us about authority, and that the only true authority is inside, that it's the I am who lives in your heart, and that you've got to take all of these pieces that you hear of the word, which is presented in many different forms. It's coming at you all the time. You've got to grab those pieces that you can that align with your mission. And your mission is to express a divine attribute here on earth. We are each a divine shard, a piece of the divine. Our job is to take the infinity of the divine and narrow it down into a single divine attribute. We then project that attribute through our imperfect selves, because everything here in the mortal plane is imperfect. Now, our divine shard, it's always perfect. It's eternal. It's part of the divine. The divine is perfect. It's wrapped in a soul body, which is a perfect body. It's the perfect container for the individuality of the unity of the divine shard. How do you break off a piece of unity and make it think that it's alone? That's the soul body. And then the soul body is replicated. It's used as a pattern for the mortal body that we have here on earth and our mortal brains, but everything here in the mortal plane is an imperfect copy of our divine selves, of our divine nature. Therefore, the us that we know here is imperfect. That's the filter. The filter is required to be imperfect because isolation, individuality, solitude, these are imperfect concepts. They don't truly exist. Only unity exists, and therefore these thoughts themselves are imperfect, and they replicate here as imperfect, and then we shine the divine light, which contains everything, through our filter, which is our mortal self, and then we get to a single attribute. And of course, we've invested it with the messiness of the mortal life, the secularity of our life here on earth. And then we've got to adjust that projection until we are cleanly projecting only the attribute. And that's the mission of our lives. And Elizabeth says that she's sad we're almost done with the book. Well, these last 3 chapters, they're going to take a while. And then John itself extends past 17 chapters, and we're going to finish those as well. So we do still have a little ways to go before we're going to finish this one, but there are more books waiting, like The Prophet. Joseph Benner has sequels to this book, The Impersonal Life. We just haven't looked at them yet. They're not as popular within the Elvis mythos as this particular book, but he also read them and he annotated them. We just don't have the annotations. But I think now we could guess with great clarity as to what he did annotate, because I have to assume whatever Joseph Benner's putting in the next book reflects everything from this book. Haven't read it yet. Maybe we'll get there together. This passage says, "Some have become so at one with me that they no longer are separated in consciousness from me, and in whom I live and move and express my spiritual nature." So these are people who are deeply attuned or aligned. Joseph Benner is all about alignment. These people are living most of their lives in a state of alignment. And that means that a great portion of that alignment time probably has clarity. So they are receiving large amounts of love with clarity, and they're able to project that forward to others. Now, that doesn't mean everything they project is correct or completely clean of their own imperfections. That's not possible. And then it says, since the earliest days of expression on earth, I have prepared my priest and my prophets and my messiahs to vision forth to the world my idea, my word that shall finally become flesh. So when we find a priest or a prophet or a messiah that we believe has great wisdom, they probably do. We're recognizing that resonance, but this chapter and the last chapter were about recognizing the limitations of our fellow divine shards, that they can't possibly contain the infinite knowledge of the divine. They're only able to harness that which is important to their own personal mission here on earth. And it's personal because it's not impersonal, which is unity. Impersonal is not a bad thing. It's unity, the place where we go and we're one with all, and therefore there is no self and there is no personality, which is a tool that we use here on earth. It's a sword and a shield. It protects us and it helps us protect others. It's also made of many layers, and it is the filter through which we send the word or the light. That's how the word finally becomes flesh. It's our flesh. But whether I speak through priest, prophet, or messiah, or through a little child, or through your worst enemy, all words that appeal vitally to you are the words the I am of you speak through the organism of such medium to your soul consciousness. So the word comes in many forms. The book's told us that many times. Some of those forms are priest, prophet, messiah, little child, worst enemy. All of them are bringing you the word in some form or another. The enemy one's interesting because an earlier chapter talked about soulmates, and you immediately jump to a conclusion it means your spouse. But here it's indicating your worst enemy could be your soulmate. The soulmate is the one who causes your soul to turn inwards to seek the I am. And that can be done through love. Well, everything is love. Or it could be a love that's reflected as animosity. And it says that all words that appeal vitally to you, this is your mission. There are words that are going to connect to you and the divine attribute that you're supposed to reflect or project. That's the words that are going to appeal vitally to you. And that's actually the I am inside you speaking to you, but they've had to externalize the voice because you're not pointed to the inside. You have not be still and know I am God, which is Psalm 46:10, and it's also the mantra of this book, be still, know I am God. You're not in communion with God, or you haven't been communing, and therefore the word is coming in different forms to you externally. even through this person you don't like, your enemy. And then it talks about the organism of such medium. When it comes through a biological entity such as ourselves, or through a pet or an animal or even a plant, that would be an organism that was a medium to your soul consciousness. You looked at a flower and you thought about how that beauty meant there was a divine. Or you saw the organizational structure and the way that a tree is built or grows. Or you tasted how wonderful that not hothouse tomato tasted, and you realize that there's more to life than just what you see or you read. But all of those could have brought you a message from the Word, and they probably are. And this next section says, should a number be gathered together to hear my word spoken through one of my priests? It is not the priest of himself, but I in the heart of each hearer, who draws from the priest the vital words that seep deep into the consciousness of each. The priest knows not what he says that so affects you, and you may not even comprehend my meaning of the words he speaks to you. Sorry, I swallowed something wrong there for a second. Give me another moment here. So these priests, they don't even know consciously what they're saying to you, or that it's touching you. And that you may not hear what they're saying to you either. You're taking it in, but at like a subconscious level. It's imprinting itself on you, but you are not absorbing it consciously. Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And this passage says, but I within him do draw from the combined devotion to and belief in me, consciously or unconsciously expressed by all those gathered around him, the spiritual force which serves as a channel or a connecting line through or over which I reach the consciousness of those minds I have prepared to comprehend my meaning. So this says, but I within him do draw from the combined devotion to and belief in me. So you both, the priest and you both are sincerely seeking, consciously and unconsciously expressed by all those gathered around him. So those who are coming to him, including you, they're all sincerely seeking. And the spiritual force which serves as a channel or a connecting line through or over which I reach the consciousness of those minds, I have prepared to comprehend my meaning. So the book has talked earlier in this chapter and earlier in the book about the need to commune with the divine, to be still and know that I am God, And we've connected that to various rituals that you may need in order to reach that point, which include things like a rosary. And the book is recognizing here that these groupings, these sheepfolds that gather around a leader, that there's a conduit that's opened because of this particular type of communion. I think it's also talking about the same conduit that would be open if you went inside and talked directly to the I Am. But I think for a lot of us, it's hard to get there to the inside because it requires this effort to be still, which many of us are not good at individually. Elvis wasn't particularly good at it. He was good at it because he practiced it through karate, but it wasn't something that was natural for him. This says, the spiritual force which serves as a channel or a connecting line through or over which I reach the consciousness. That's the conduit. So that in some cases, this sheepfold of the people around the leader, that's what's leading to the stillness for some of these people. That they're able to reach this be still and know I am God state while they're listening to the teacher. For although I speak the same words to all, yet these words contain a distinct and separate message for each. This is a reflection of the depth of scripture of the word, that there are layers of meaning, that we're almost always going to gravitate towards the very top layer when we first hear it. That's the way everyone grabs it the first time around. But there's a need to spiral around each of the words, each of the passages, to understand the distinct and separate messages that are in there. One of those might be the distinct and separate message that you need, but it's also indicating that while you're hearing the distinct and separate message for you, there is a possibility to pull back out to a more objective level and look and see the other distinct and separate messages that are contained and whatever's being said, and to understand those are being targeted towards other people, other divine shards. And that would give you a larger framework for the entire project, which Benner calls the real earth, and I think of as a painting the size of the universe. But everybody's getting the same words with a distinct and separate message. It's like everybody's got their own enigma machine and their own translating code, but the code that everyone receives is the same. And for those of you who might be confused by that, an enigma machine is a machine they use to transmit encrypted messages during World War II. It was the Axis that used it. And the Allies, they broke the code. So the Allies knew a lot of the enemy movements that the enemy believed was encrypted. And this says, and no one knows any but the message I speak to him. So maybe you can't pull out and know the messages of the others. I don't think that's what that's saying. I think it's saying in the moment, when you're in that conduit of the sheepfold and you're hearing the message, you're receiving the message that's for you in that moment. For I within you choose from the words the meaning I intend for you. And I within your brother and your sister likewise choose the meaning I intend for each of them. And this explains why the same passage can be read and three different people in that congregation can look at each other and repeat it back to each other, and they've got 3 different messages, which are different from the 4th message, which is the one that the pastor intended. And this says, when 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there will I always be. Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. For the idea which draws these 2 or 3 together, I within each inspire, for it is my idea. So the need to gather together, the desire to do so, that comes from the divine, because the sheepfold is a way to get the messages across. It opens our conduits to hear the word. And from the union of their aspirations towards me do I create a medium or channel through which I enable the soul consciousness to gain such glimpses of me as each is capable of comprehending. And so that when these people come together, there's something magical about the way that the divine shards interact with each other. We could think of this as the projections from each combining. And it makes the projection of each clearer. Not just to others around them, but to themselves. That these dirty spots or whatever it is that needs to be cleaned from their own projections, the distortions, they show up clearly. And they're able then to focus on fixing those particular issues within the projection. Their projection isn't wrong, it's just slightly warped. It's a technical issue, not a moral issue. And this says, every priest, every teacher, every medium, I cause instinctively to know this, for they are my chosen ministers. So these people know that it's good to gather others, and that they're all going to get different messages. And I likewise cause to awaken in the priests, the teachers, the mediums, a desire to surround themselves with followers. So he's inspired in these people that it was good to have these followers around them because it's accomplishing something the divine wants. And then he causes in them a desire to make that happen. He says that I may quicken in the hearts of those who are ready a consciousness of my presence within. So that this gathering together and looking externally to a teacher is actually a path internally to the I am. This is the doorway to the temple which the teacher has come out and brought us to from the shadows. It says this teacher, this priest, this medium, this is one doorway into the temple. But the temple itself is you. The teacher's not in there. The priest isn't there. The medium's not there. Only the I am is there. So the priest, the teacher, the medium, they are showing you the way into your own heart. And they're showing it to you by showing you the way into their heart. This is where I went. The same place is within you. That's where you can go. The priest, the teacher, or the medium themselves may never have recognized me within. So it could be that this teacher, they're standing at this doorway with you and they've never been inside. You've both reached the same point in the spiritual journey. Should we enter our own hearts and talk to the I am, it's fairly terrifying. Everything's brought us to this point. even I, the teacher, haven't gone through here. And they may be deeming me as entitized. That's a strange word. It means entity, but brought into some form. Or personalized in some master or guide or savior without themselves. So this is a person who was looking for the light. They found the light in another divine shard. And now they're out gathering others to bring back to this other divine shard. So we're like 2 steps away from reaching the real light itself, the source of the light, but that's okay too. I think the book's setting up that you may have to come through 100 of these people, thousands of these divine shards, all of which have a light that guides you part of the way. And a lot of them are simply guiding you to another person, another divine shard with light. And I am saying here in this passage, that's okay. There's a lot of paths to get to where you need to go. But this first part of the journey, all of these original spirals, the ones that go through other people, these are all paths back into your own heart, into the I am. So this isn't wasted time, but the true valuable time is the time that you spend in your heart with the I am. And all of this time with the masters and the teachers and the mediums, this is about learning to spend that quality time with the I am, because it is terrifying to go inside ourselves and to talk to him. It feels shameful to us to do so because we've done things against him. We're scared that we won't be forgiven. We don't really want to know the truth about things because that means we're going to have to change pieces of our personality, and our personality is very, very against that. If it even suspects that you're going to enter into this other state and then come back out and something's going to be different about the personality, well, it needs to shut that down. That can't be good for anyone to have the personality change, is the way the personality sees it. But nevertheless, there are those whom I lead to these my ministers, in whom through certain words I cause my ministers to speak, together with the spiritual force furnished by the various aspirants, that's the Holy Ghost. Together with the spiritual force furnished by the various aspirants, all of these divine shards have brought their shard of the Holy Ghost together. And all of that's working together within this sheepfold community as the spiritual force. That I am enabled to awaken their soul consciousness to a real comprehension of me, the impersonal one, seated within, in the very midst of all, in the heart of each. And so that all of these people have come together, these various divine shards, around a shard that has a very bright light of faith, a bright lantern, and everyone's pulling strength from that lantern. And the lesson here is that if we look around, we'll see yet a brighter lantern, or the real source of the light. And that includes this teacher, that they're seeking for the same thing, and that even though we may not be as far up on the spiral as they are, although they're different spirals, they're really not comparative in that manner, but they're gaining something from our divine shard. That even these fully imperfect projections of the divine attributes that we each have, somehow, when they're combined together, overcome all of the imperfections, and they guide all of the sheepfold towards their own hearts and back to the I am. Hi, Patty. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And this says, for I am of my minister. Oh, it says for, let me start this over. For the I am of my minister and the I am of each follower are one. One in consciousness, one in understanding, one in love, and one in purpose, which purpose is the fulfillment of my will. This is a very wordy way to say that all is unity. All is love, all is the divine. Love is the building block of the universe. This is why the words are all the same. The words are the same, the meaning that we each pull from them are different, but the I am is the same in every heart. And this I am, which is wholly impersonal, it does not have a personality. The I am is not an incarnation here on earth as we are. We are incarnate, which means we're in this body, and therefore we are trapped in this body, and we're trapped in the way this body perceives the universe. These times with the I am are glimpses of what lies outside of the prison cells of our bodies. But these prison cells are absolutely necessary. They are not something we should escape. They're something that are needed in order to individualize the impersonal message of the light. We bend the light the same way that a prism does. We refract it into its separate components, which show up as different colors, like a rainbow. And we're here to take care of one of those colors. Which color of the rainbow are you here to take care of? But that's the one you're supposed to project. And this I am, which is wholly impersonal and knows neither time, space, nor different identities. This is a statement that the divine lives in the divine now, which is all time, all space, all identities, which are no identities, all love collapsed into a single point. It's outside of what we think of as time and space. It's outside of our ability to perceive the universe. We perceive it sequentially. That's required for the mission. But when we return to unity, we will not see things in sequence anymore. We won't need sequence. And this I am, which is wholly impersonal and knows neither time, space, nor different identities, merely utilizes the personalities. That's that part of us which mask the divine shard, but which is the filter for the projection. So the I am is merely utilizing the filters of both the minister and the followers in the circumstance of personal contact. This is when the shards come together and they see each other's personalities, because we can't take off our personality here in the earthly realm. We can only do that in our hearts with the I am. He's the only one that ever gets to see us truly naked. All the others see a mask, all of the other divine shards. But there's still great value in that personal contact. That's the sharing of the individual projections. So we're not just communing or communicating with various divine shards. We're projecting and receiving divine attributes. That's the personal contact. And the circumstance of personal contact as a means of giving voice to my idea, ever struggling within for outer expression. So you're supposed to be outwardly expressing this divine attribute. And in this sheepfold with these others around the teacher, from their projections, you're seeing reflections or glimpses of your own divine attribute, the one that you're supposed to be projecting. And that's what you're absorbing. You're grabbing all those extra little pieces that weren't within your projection of the attribute you were supposed to be projecting. Like somehow these other shards are projecting pieces of what you're supposed to have, and they're doing it better in some instance because your projection didn't have this piece. So you're gathering these from the other shards, which are really from the divine. He sent you these shards so that they can tell you this message, even though he's been trying to tell you from the inside, but you're not good at listening on the inside. And that's just another truth of our carnate existence. We are not good at listening to the I am in our hearts. That's why we have to have all these instructions. And Joseph Benner's trying to spell things out that weren't, to him, clear within the scriptures. At least they weren't of a clarity that others were picking up. And he wanted to make sure that other people could see this. And I think that's what touches Elvis, and he then begins to try to get other people to see this, but like his Aunt Lillian, she can't see this. This does not speak to her shard. This is not the way that she accepts the universe or her religious thinking. And that's not something Elvis can argue with or that he's willing to argue with. He keeps looking back into these books, trying to figure out, I see the resonance, but when I show it to others who I know feel resonance the way I do, that they are coming from the same place I came from, they can't see it. Like Lillian. And why is that? Lillian was as close to his mother as anybody on earth possibly could be. She would have reflected his mother's views on these items, on these different thoughts that Elvis is having. But Lillian wasn't able to follow Elvis into these thoughts. And so he's looking at a chapter like this thinking, I see what Benner is saying, but I can't make anyone else see this. And then he's searching for the right language and the way to put that together so they could see it, because Elvis knows that when he sings things, people receive messages. That somehow he has the power to clarify through music the way that Benner has the ability to clarify through these words, which some of us might say isn't clarifying at all. But Elvis, I think they did clarify thoughts. These long run-on sentences that Benner uses. And this passage says, those ministers who take the confidence and trust of my followers and use it to further their own private purposes, I cause to awaken to a recognition of my will and my idea, all in proper season. Now, Joseph Benner wrote this in 1914, but if he'd written this in the 1980s during the peak of the televangelist era, when they were bringing in millions per day from people by asking their viewers to send in money, which we could say was their own private purposes, and later criminal and other legal matters were brought forth into the public that proved that a lot of this was for private purposes of the ministers. And of course, this kind of thing still happens today. It says that don't worry about these people. That yes, it's shocking what they did. That yes, they did abuse their power and their abilities and the gift that had been given to them to be able to gather all of these people who were truly seeking. The people that sent the money, they're truly seeking. Sincerely seeking. So, sincerely seeking is not compromised because you sincerely sought through the wrong person. There are no right people. There is only the I am in your heart. And that these lessons of who you can trust and who you can't, which is ultimately no one, it's the I am in your heart. All the other shards are as confused as you are, no matter how non-confused they sound. And not to worry about them, that they're on their own spiral and they will awaken to the recognition of the will and the idea, all in the proper season. That this is some of what's been told to us as unconscious or unwillful participation in the divine will. That yes, these people abused their powers, they did things they shouldn't have done, they profited from it. It certainly seems unfair when we look at it through our secular lens, our perspective. But this passage is saying great spiritual things happen to you because of this. And that don't let yourself be drugged down by what this other person or this other divine shard got caught up in. That what you heard resonating as real, that you then took to the I am and continued to resonate, that is real. And that the knowledge of the reality, the fact that you have my knowledge, that you know right from wrong, doesn't mean you only do right. That the temptations, all the pitfalls of the mortal condition, they all still exist. Misalignment is the soup in which we swim our lives. And that not to be concerned about the shards that we see falling into misalignment, other than to shine our own lights and say, fellow shard, if you need this light to help reorient to find the real light, you're welcome to do so. But we can't force anybody into seeing the light. We can't force anybody to come to gather around us, and we can't force anyone into the temple of their own heart in order to talk to the I am. It says, this awakening, however, is not pleasant to their personalities. That means it's not pleasant to our personalities either. Our awakening is not pleasant to our personalities, and almost always causes much suffering and humiliation. And so this is again identifying the personality as a tool, but it's a self-aware tool. And it's going to move to block any actions which are going to change it. It feels itself to be inviolate because it's protecting you from internal collapse in what it sees as the real world. The only place it can exist, here in the mortal realm. And it needs to do that. It's doing a really good job when it does that. That's what we want it to do. But on a spiritual plane, we have to be able to separate the mortal from the spiritual and then set aside the personality in order to understand the full mission, to receive all of the word, and then to put it into practice by changing our personality, by cleaning the filter. And that causes us suffering and humiliation. Those are two of the tricks of the personality to turn you from alignment. When you're humiliated, think of your posture. You turn around, you hunch over, you hide your face in your hands, and then you suffer because you are turned away from the I am. That's the suffering. That's why there's so much suffering and humiliation. That's why you're feeling it. They're not false feelings. You know, your feelings aren't false. You feel them. But they're signposts that you're probably doing the right thing in this moment. You're reaching the I am. The personality is terrified, and it's sending out these signals. And this is kind of indicating these signals are what we've been looking for, because this is what's going to open us to the message of the I am. And it says, but their souls rejoice and sing grateful praises to me when I bring it to pass. So the suffering and humiliation of your personality is also the rejoicing and grateful praising of your divine shard. That there is a major difference between our mortal and our secular and our internal religious or spiritual lives. That a lot of the work is just separating these two perspectives and understanding that we've been conflating them since the moment we opened our eyes in this incarnated state. And Elizabeth says, it's hard enough for us to speak to the I am and to give up our personality, to be willing to accept it, which can be hard to let go without explaining it to anyone else. And Mark says that sometimes anyone else can be a hindrance to our enlightenment. They can. But this is also pointing out that you may have not ever gotten to this alignment without these others. And that it's not just the things they're doing right or the things they're saying right. Some of it's the things they're doing wrong or what you perceive as wrong. Think of that enemy that talks to you and somehow that turns you into yourself. But Monica says that she's got someone at the door and has to go. Have a great day, Monica. Thank you so much for being here. And she's right. We've all got to go because we've reached the end of the hour. So whether there's someone knocking on your door or just at your heart, now is the time that we've got to separate again for the day. We are going to come back at 3 p.m. this afternoon. We're going to look at Patsy Presley's jewelry box, like the piece we looked at the very beginning of this episode. At 1 p.m. today, Eastern Daylight Time, I think it's EDT time, is Elvis Trivia, the greatest Elvis trivia on the planet. It'll be on the Elvis Effect channel, 1 p.m. He usually really starts the trivia about 1:30, so you do have some time to show up. But 1 p.m. EDT today, then 3 p.m. EDT for Patsy Presley's jewelry box. And then we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. EDT with more of this spiritual quest. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I appreciate your comments and your chat. Whether you're live or you're watching on the replay, be sure that you've liked, that you're subscribed, and that you keep on taking care of business. This is Quiet Light.
Beauty walks soft as a whisper, yet thunders like storms overhead. Kind and gentle in its passing, still a thing of might and dread. and the word became a lantern placed in trembling human hands, saying, "Child, behold my glory, not in faces, but in hearts that understand. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen." Beauty's not the mask we're wearing, not the mirrors feeding grace. Beauty burns within the heart space, kindness casting God's own shadow on the contours of a face. And the I am speaks in stillness, in the breath between each thought that soul remembers union with the love it never lost. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every wanderer is called home. He wrote truth in quiet margins for the ones who read between. Faith will conquer, said the giver. I am the light you've always seen. Distance only closes in the moment, when the veil of flesh is torn. Yet the word says I am with you from the instant you are born. Dreams stay cold, room silent, body, mind and spirit still as one. In that hush the lantern brightens, and the night becomes undone. Be as gentle as the lamb is when you're dealing out your love. Be as fearless as the lion when you guard what's holy from above. Let your honor strike like lightning, swift and righteous in its speed. For the light that lives within you is the strength behind the creed. For the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome. Every soul receives a lantern, every seeker finds the one. He wrote truth in quiet margins as a gift for those in need. Faith will conquer, said the giver. Walk in light and you are free. And the I am whispers softly as the lantern warms your hand. I am beauty, I am kindness, I am the light in every man.